Liberation Day. That is what President Trump is calling the new tariffs that he just announced from the Rose Garden at the White House. Good evening to you. I'm Scott Thuman. Thanks for joining us here on 7 News at 6 o'clock. The president called out nations worldwide, saying both friend and foe have, quote, looted and pillaged our country.
In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal, that means they do it to us and we do it to them.
All right, 7 News has live team coverage now, starting with Jasmine Stiles over at the alert desk. So, Jasmine, break down these new tariffs for us.
And boy, do we have a lot to cover. Let's kind of start you on the basics here. Essentially, the president announced a 10% baseline tariff on pretty much all of the goods coming into the U.S. and what he's calling a reciprocal tariff, which Scott talked about a little earlier, imposed on countries that place duties on U.S. imports. Now, the biggest thing we learned today was the group of countries senior officials call the worst offenders. About 60 total. Now let's get you up to date on what these tariffs include. Items like steel, aluminum, Venezuelan oil, pharmaceutical drugs, lumber. We've also got copper, computer chips, and a 25% tariff on foreign-made cars and car parts. Now, experts have warned against inciting what they call a trade war, but we'll get a better look at how the markets react when they open tomorrow morning. Scott?
Yeah, a lot to play out here. Jasmine, thank you. Democrats, meanwhile, are vowing to fight what they are calling Trump's trade war. Maryland Senator Angela Alsobrooke spoke out today saying none of these tariffs help the average American.
The people who are being liberated are the billionaires. None of his policies, including these tariffs, anticipate any relief for hardworking and middle-class families.
7 News' Josh Chapin continues our team coverage tonight, getting reaction from your communities tonight. Josh, you're at an inside small business there in Alexandria that's having to reevaluate everything.
Yeah, Scott, the owner of Port City Brewing here in Alexandria, said it has been all sorts of chaotic for them. They have been for months on pins and needles waiting for today's announcement from the president. We, as you said, are inside that brewery right here in Alexandria where they make the beer, they can it, they bottle as you see here, and they ship it out all across the East Coast.
It's very frustrating because it's tough enough to run a small business when your supply chain is perfectly intact, and to have this unnecessary element of chaos thrown into our supply chain planning just makes it impossible for us to plan our business.
That is Bill Butcher. He's been extremely worried about the effects of the Canadian tariffs because the main ingredient in all the beers you see in here is grown in Canada. Then he said there are issues with the Mexican tariffs because their bottle caps are made south of the border, not to mention the aluminum tariffs. Most of the beer they make here goes into bottles, but now some of the bigger breweries, bigger makers are trying to avoid aluminum tariffs and snatching up all the supply of bottles.
In order for us to survive, we're going to have to pass that along to the consumer.
One of the things that we all saw during COVID is that we're very reliant on outside of the U.S. Countries and companies to provide supplies to us during very stressed periods. And I do think that restructuring that is a big benefit to the U.S.
We also spoke this afternoon with Rodney Lake, professor of business over at George Washington University. He believes it is so important for the U.S. to have some kind of manufacturing base for healthcare, aerospace, and other things for national defense. If there is a bit of good news here, Scott Butcher believes his items should be covered under the U.S.-Mexico Canada agreement, so they're still working to see if the price of a six-pack, wherever you get your beer, is going to go up. We'll, of course, keep you posted. Scott, back to you.
Yeah, a lot of complicating factors to consider. Josh, thank you for explaining that. Meanwhile, we've seen how these tariffs affect businesses, but they also impact your finances, too. As the cost of more products go up, so do grocery bills, auto and house repairs, and really big purchases get even pricier. So, have you changed your money habits because of the tariff policy? Scan that QR code on your screen so you can vote in our poll on WJLA.com. So far, the majority say yes, their habits have changed.